The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like a cloud of metal death around Earth's solar system. High Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive blue world that had dared to threaten the Confederacy. His skin shifted to deep purple with anger as he remembered the human admiral's words. "Communications, open a channel to all fleet commanders," Vextar ordered. "Begin the demonstration. Target their outer installations first. Show them what happens to species that refuse our generosity." The order went out across the fleet. Hundreds of alien warships began moving toward their targets. Jupiter's moons, Saturn's rings, the asteroid belt mining operations. Everything the humans had built beyond their home world would be swept away in the first wave. On Earth, deep beneath the Colorado mountains, Dr. Alan Cross watched the alien movements on his displays. The Hidden Valley Research Facility had been his home for 30 years. Ever since the first alien scouts had been detected at the edge of the solar system, what the world thought was a simple research station was actually humanity's most important military installation. "They're moving," Cross reported into his headset. "All stations, this is Control. Execute Phoenix Protocol immediately." Across the solar system, installations that had appeared dead and abandoned for decades suddenly came to life. On Titan, Captain Ben Foster watched his screens light up as power flowed through systems that had been dormant for years. The moon's surface began to shift and change as massive weapon platforms rose from beneath the ice. "Titan base to Control. All systems are green," Foster reported. "We have full power and target acquisition." Similar reports came flooding in from across the system. Ceres Station activated its hidden railgun batteries. The Europa facility deployed its quantum torpedo launchers. Even tiny Pluto revealed itself to be a massive sensor array and communication hub. The Zephyrian fleet was moving toward Jupiter when the first surprise hit them. What they had identified as a simple fuel depot on Io suddenly opened fire. Streams of accelerated particles tore through the lead alien ships before they even realized they were under attack. "Impossible," breathed Vextar as he watched 3 of his destroyers explode in brilliant flashes. How did they hide weapon systems of that magnitude? His tactical officer was frantically working at his console. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The installations we cataloged as industrial are revealing military capabilities." On Mars, Colonel Maria Santos stood in the command center of what the aliens had believed was a terraforming station. The red planet's surface was honeycombed, with tunnels and chambers that housed the most sophisticated defense network ever built by human hands. "Titan, defense grid is fully operational," Santos announced to her staff. "All orbital platforms are online and ready for engagement." The aliens were learning that human engineering was far more advanced than they had realized. While other species built their weapons to be seen and feared, humans had built theirs to be invisible until the moment they were needed. Lieutenant Commander Jake Palmer coordinated the transformation of Earth's merchant fleet. Ships that had appeared to be simple cargo vessels suddenly deployed hidden weapon systems and military-grade armor. The civilian traffic that the aliens had ignored was actually a disguised navy, waiting for the signal to attack. "All merchant vessels, this is Palmer," he broadcast on encrypted channels. "Drop your covers and assume combat formation. Operation Trojan Horse is now active." Throughout the solar system, supposedly civilian ships revealed their true nature. Ore haulers became assault vessels. Passenger liners deployed fighter wings. Research ships unveiled experimental weapons that no alien military had ever encountered. The Zephyrian fleet found itself facing an enemy that seemed to multiply before their eyes. Every target they had identified as harmless was suddenly shooting at them with weapons that matched or exceeded their own technology. "Sir, we're detecting quantum tunneling signatures," the tactical officer reported to Vextar. "The humans have developed instantaneous communication across the entire system." Vexitar's skin cycled through colors rapidly as he processed this information. Quantum tunneling was theoretical even to the Confederacy's best scientists. The humans had not only solved it but weaponized it for military coordination. On Ganymede, Captain Roy Hansen watched as alien ships moved into his trap. What appeared to be a simple mining facility was actually the most sophisticated ambush point in the system. Hidden beneath the moon's surface were launch bays filled with human fighters that had been waiting decades for this moment. "Control, this is Ganymede. Enemy fleet is in position, requesting permission to engage. Ganymede, you are cleared for launch. Show them what human fighters can do." The moon's surface erupted as hundreds of sleek fighters burst from concealed hangars. The alien fleet had expected to face slow, primitive human vessels. Instead, they found themselves swarmed by ships that moved like nothing they had ever seen. Human fighters didn't fly like alien craft. They spun and rolled and changed direction in ways that seemed impossible. Their pilots had trained in Earth's gravity wells and asteroid fields, learning to think in 3 dimensions while their enemies were used to the predictable patterns of space combat. Captain Helen Burke led the first fighter squadron against the alien formation. Her ship twisted through a barrage of enemy fire that would have destroyed any conventional vessel. Human reflexes, honed by millions of years of evolution as persistence hunters, allowed her to anticipate and dodge attacks that computer-guided systems couldn't even track. All squadrons, remember your training, Burke broadcast to her pilots. These aliens have never fought anyone who evolved on a death world. Show them what that means. The space around Jupiter became a battlefield unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved with organic fluidity, while alien vessels relied on rigid formation flying. The result was a slaughter that left Vextar staring at his tactical displays in disbelief. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Our ships are superior in every measurable way." His science officer looked up from her console with confusion, written across her alien features. "Sir, I believe the issue is not their ships but their biology. They appear to be natural 3-dimensional thinkers. Their reaction times are beyond anything we've encountered." Dr. Cross watched the battle from his command center deep beneath Earth's surface. The alien fleet was discovering that humanity had spent 4 decades not just preparing weapons, but preparing soldiers. Every human pilot had trained in conditions that would kill most alien species. They had learned to fight in environments that no other species considered survivable. Phase 2 is complete, Cross reported to Earth Command. All hidden installations are active and engaging. The enemy is falling back from the outer system. Admiral Murphy received the report aboard the command station orbiting Earth. "Excellent. Send word to all theater commanders. Execute Phase 3. Throughout the system, human forces that had been holding back suddenly revealed themselves. The asteroid belt, which the aliens had thought was simply a mining region, transformed into the galaxy's largest weapons factory. Automated systems began producing missiles, fighters, and weapon platforms at a rate that seemed impossible. Captain Walsh supervised the deployment of humanity's true fleet from hidden bases in the outer system. Ships that had been constructed in secret over 30 years of preparation emerged from concealed positions. These were not the crude vessels the aliens had observed, but weapons of war designed by a species that had never known peace. The Zephyrian fleet found itself retreating toward the edge of the solar system as human forces pressed their attack. Vextar watched his supposedly overwhelming advantage dissolve as the humans revealed more hidden capabilities with each passing hour. "Send a message to Confederacy Command," he ordered. "Request immediate reinforcement. The humans are not what we believed them to be." But it was already too late. The sleeping giant was fully awake and humanity was just getting started. General Patricia Coleman stood in the war room buried 3 miles beneath the surface of Earth. Around her, holographic displays showed the battle raging across the solar system. The alien fleet was retreating, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Confederacy had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years by crushing resistance before it could spread. They would not give up easily. "General, we're receiving reports from all sectors," her aide reported. "The enemy is regrouping at the edge of the system. Intelligence suggests they're calling for reinforcements." Coleman nodded grimly. She had expected this. The aliens would bring everything they had to crush humanity's rebellion before other species got ideas about freedom. That was exactly what she was counting on. "Activate the external assets," she ordered. "It's time to show them that Earth was never our only preparation." Across the galaxy, humans who had been living quiet lives as traders, diplomats, and researchers suddenly received coded messages. Agent Paul Dixon was sitting in a cantina on the Confederacy Capital World when his communicator buzzed with a pattern he had been waiting 30 years to hear. Dixon finished his drink and walked calmly to the spaceport's main power distribution center. The security guards knew him as a harmless human merchant who visited regularly. They had no idea he was carrying devices that would shut down half the planet's infrastructure. "Control, this is Dixon. Package delivered. Beginning systematic disruption of enemy command structure. Similar reports came in from dozens of worlds across Confederacy space. Humans who had seemed like harmless civilians revealed themselves as deep cover agents. Supply depots exploded. Communication networks failed. Transport hubs ground to a halt. Back in the solar system, Commander Roy Hansen led his strike team aboard a captured Zephyrian supply ship. The aliens had underestimated human adaptability once again. While they focused on matching technology with technology, humans had learned to turn the enemy's strengths against them. Remember, we're not trying to out-tech them, Hansen told his team as they approached the alien command vessel. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to survive. The strike team didn't carry advanced weapons or sophisticated equipment. Instead, they brought something the aliens had no defense against. Biological warfare agents that were harmless to humans but deadly to the oxygen-breathing species that made up most of the Confederacy fleet. Hansen's team infiltrated the enemy ship during the confusion of battle. While alien damage control teams fought fires and repaired systems, the humans moved through the ventilation network, spreading airborne agents that their own immune systems could handle easily. Within hours, the massive Zephyrian dreadnought was drifting helplessly, as its crew succumbed to diseases that Earth's children recovered from in a few days. The aliens had superior technology, but they had never evolved the brutal immune systems that came from living on a world where everything was trying to kill you. Captain Helen Burke demonstrated another uniquely human trait during the battle for the outer system. When her fighter wing was overwhelmed by superior numbers, she didn't retreat or surrender. Instead, she did something that horrified the alien observers. She sacrificed her own ship to take out the enemy flagship. But Burke's sacrifice wasn't the desperate act of a defeated warrior. As her damaged fighter plunged toward the alien vessel, her crew escaped in pods that had been designed for exactly this purpose. Each escape pod was equipped with guidance systems and explosive charges, turning the crew's evacuation into a coordinated missile attack. The alien captain watched in shock as what he thought was a defeated enemy ship transformed into a dozen precision weapons. The concept of planned sacrifice for tactical advantage was alien to species that had evolved in stable environments. Only humans who had learned that sometimes dying was the best way to ensure your tribe survived could conceive such strategies. High Commander Vextar received reports from across the battlefield that left him struggling to understand what he was facing. Human tactics made no sense according to Confederacy military doctrine. They broke every rule of civilized warfare. "Sir, the humans are using biological weapons," his medical officer reported, "but the agents are not designed to kill. They seem intended to incapacitate our crews while leaving their own forces unaffected." "How is that possible?" Vextar demanded. "We believe they are using diseases from their own world, sir. Their immune systems are adapted to handle pathogens that would be lethal to us." Vextar's skin shifted to a sickly yellow as he processed this information. The humans weren't just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with their entire evolutionary history as a weapon. Dr. Nancy White's Psychological Warfare Division had been monitoring alien communications since the battle began. What they discovered gave humanity another devastating advantage. The Confederacy species had never faced an enemy that fought like humans did. "General Coleman, this is White. We've broken their command codes. The alien fleet is in complete disarray. They're trying to apply standard battle doctrines to an enemy that doesn't follow any known patterns." Coleman smiled grimly. "Send the psychological profiles to all unit commanders. Let them know exactly how to break each species." The profiles that went out to human forces contained decades of research into alien psychology. The proud Zephyrians could be shamed into making mistakes. The logical Kresh could be confused with seemingly irrational tactics. The emotional Veltar could be enraged into abandoning their formations. Humanity had studied their enemies not just technologically, but psychologically. They knew exactly which buttons to push to make each species react in predictable ways. Captain Rick Taylor led a boarding party onto a disabled alien cruiser, but instead of trying to capture it, his team began broadcasting messages throughout the ship. The content was carefully crafted to exploit the specific psychological weaknesses of the Yeth crew. "Attention, Yeth warriors," Taylor announced over the ship's communication system. "Your commanders have abandoned you. Your fleet is retreating while leaving you to die. This is how the Confederacy treats species that are not Zephyrian. The Yeth were a proud warrior species that had chafed under Zephyrian leadership for centuries. Taylor's words, backed up by carefully edited footage of the battle, caused the crew to mutiny against their Confederacy officers. Similar tactics were being employed throughout the alien fleet. Humans had learned that the Confederacy was held together by fear and mutual dependence, not loyalty. Applied pressure in the right places could shatter alliances that had lasted for generations. Agent Dixon's sabotage efforts were paying off across Confederacy space. As reports of the solar system battle spread, other subjugated species began to wonder if the mighty Confederacy could actually be defeated. Supply lines that had operated smoothly for centuries suddenly became unreliable. "Control, this is Dixon. The Veltar home fleet is refusing to deploy to your location. They're claiming they need to protect their own worlds from internal threats." General Coleman received the report with satisfaction. "Excellent. Phase 4 is working ahead of schedule. The Confederacy is starting to eat itself." The alien fleet at the edge of the solar system was discovering that their reinforcements weren't coming. Worse, some of their own ships were beginning to question orders. The humans had introduced something into galactic politics that the Confederacy had never faced. The idea that the mighty could actually fall. "Hi, Commander." Vextar stared at his tactical displays as his fleet continued to shrink. Ships were not just being destroyed in battle. They were defecting, mutinying, or simply refusing to fight against an enemy that seemed to break every rule of warfare. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human commander," his communications officer reported. "Put it through," Vextar ordered. Admiral Murphy's face appeared on the main screen, calm and confident despite commanding a species that had been unknown to the galaxy just days before. "Hi, Commander. I believe it's time we discuss terms," Murphy said. "You came here to demonstrate Confederacy power. Instead, you've demonstrated something else entirely. You've shown the galaxy that the mighty Confederacy can be beaten." Vexitar's skin cycled through colors of rage and fear. "This is not over, human. The full might of 12 worlds will crush your species." Murphy's smile was cold as the space between stars. "Hi, Commander, you still don't understand what you're facing. We're not just fighting your fleet. We're fighting your entire system. And we're winning." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar alone with the realization that humanity had turned his demonstration of power into something far more dangerous. Proof that the Confederacy could be defeated. Fleet Admiral Grace Kelly stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance as it emerged from behind Saturn's largest moon. The massive warship had been hidden there for 15 years, waiting for this moment. Around her, dozens of similar vessels decloaked from positions throughout the outer system. These were humanity's true warships, built not for exploration or commerce, but for one purpose only: to end threats to Earth permanently. "All ships report ready for combat," her tactical officer announced. "The retribution, vengeance, and justice are in position. The alien fleet is trapped between our forces and the inner system defenses." Kelly watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy ships found themselves surrounded by green markers. The Zephyrian fleet had expected to face a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, they were about to discover what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be weak. "Open channels to all ships," Kelly ordered. "Begin Operation Extinction." The human fleet moved with precision that spoke of decades of planning and preparation. While the aliens had been watching Earth build simple exploration vessels, humanity's real navy had been taking shape in the darkness beyond Neptune. Ships that had never been detected by alien sensors now revealed themselves as the most advanced weapons of war the galaxy had ever seen. Colonel Steve Morgan led the first wave of boarding actions against the alien fleet. His Marines moved through the zero-gravity environment of disabled enemy ships like predators, born to hunt in 3 dimensions. The aliens discovered that humans didn't just fight in space, they thrived in it. "Remember your training," Morgan broadcast to his troops as they breached another alien hull. "These species evolved on stable worlds with predictable gravity. We evolved climbing trees and hunting across varied terrain. Use that advantage." The human Marines flowed through the alien ship's corridors like water finding cracks in stone. They moved up walls and across ceilings, using magnetic boots and handholds to attack from directions the enemy couldn't predict. The aliens had trained to fight in the 2-dimensional battles common to space warfare. Humans fought in all 3 dimensions at once. Morgan's squad cornered a group of Zephyrian soldiers in what had once been their command center. The aliens were taller and stronger than humans, with advanced armor and superior weapons. None of that mattered when faced with an enemy that could think faster and move in ways their training had never prepared them for. "Surrender your weapons and you will not be harmed," Morgan announced in perfectly accented Zephyrian. The aliens stared in shock at the human who spoke their language better than some of their own soldiers. Dr. Nancy. White's psychological warfare teams had spent decades learning not just alien languages, but their cultural triggers and behavioral patterns. Every human soldier carried translators programmed with phrases designed to maximum psychological impact on each enemy species. "High Commander." Vextar received reports that made his worst fears seem optimistic. Human boarding parties were not just capturing his ships, they were converting them. Alien crews were surrendering not because they were defeated, but because the humans knew exactly what to say to break their will to fight. "Sir, the humans are offering terms to our crews," his intelligence officer reported. "They're promising freedom from Confederacy rule and protection for their homeworlds. Many of our auxiliary species are accepting." Vextar's skin shifted to deep red with rage. "Impossible! The Confederacy has kept peace in this galaxy for 1,000 years. Sir, the humans are broadcasting our classified files. They're showing every species exactly how the Confederacy has suppressed their development and exploited their resources." The humans had done more than just prepare for war. They had prepared to win the peace that would follow. Every alien species in the Confederacy had grievances against their rulers, complaints that had been ignored for centuries. Humanity had catalogued every injustice, every broken promise, every act of oppression. Captain Tony Lewis coordinated the information warfare campaign from his command ship. The data streams flowing across Confederacy space were carefully crafted to appeal to each species' specific desires for freedom and self-determination. "Broadcasting to Kresh worlds now," Lewis reported, showing them how their scientific advances were claimed by Zephyrian researchers. Veltar systems are receiving documentation of resource quotas that kept them in artificial poverty. The Confederacy was learning that humans fought wars on multiple levels simultaneously. While human ships battled the enemy fleet, human agents were destroying the political foundations that held their empire together. Agent Paul Dixon had moved from sabotage to recruitment on the Confederacy capital world. The aliens had always seen humans as harmless because they appeared weak and divided. They never realized that this apparent weakness was actually humanity's greatest strength. Their ability to adapt to any environment and turn local populations to their cause. "Control. This is Dixon. We have successfully recruited the entire Yeth security force on the capital. They're providing us with access to the Confederacy's strategic planning networks. The humans were discovering that most of the Confederacy's member species had joined not from loyalty, but from fear. When presented with a credible alternative, many were eager to switch sides. The Zephyrians had ruled through intimidation, never earning the genuine respect of their subjects. Fleet Admiral Kelly watched as the enemy fleet began to break apart. Not from battle damage, but from internal collapse. Ship after ship signaled surrender, or simply powered down their weapons. The mighty Confederacy was discovering that their empire had been built on foundations of sand. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority communication from the Zephyrian flagship," her communications officer announced. "High Commander Vextar is requesting negotiation." Kelly smiled coldly. "Tell him that humanity doesn't negotiate with entities that threaten Earth. He can surrender, unconditionally, or continue fighting, until his fleet is completely destroyed." The response came back within minutes. Vextar's voice carried the defeat of a leader who had watched his entire worldview crumble in a matter of days. "Admiral Kelly, the Zephyrian Confederacy formally surrenders to human forces. We request terms and conditions for the cessation of hostilities." "The terms are simple," Kelly replied. "Complete withdrawal from this system, reparations for the resources spent defending against your unprovoked attack, and most importantly, recognition of humanity's right to exist without interference." But even as the formal surrender was being negotiated, Kelly knew this was just the beginning. Word of the Confederacy's defeat was spreading across the galaxy at light speed. Other empires would be watching, evaluating, deciding whether humanity represented an opportunity or a threat. Dr. White's analysis teams were already preparing for the next phase. "Admiral, we're detecting increased chatter from the hegemony worlds beyond the rim. They're mobilizing exploration fleets to investigate what happened here." Kelly nodded grimly. The Zephyrian Confederacy had been one of three major powers in this part of the galaxy. Their defeat would create a power vacuum that others would try to fill. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, and now they would have to deal with the consequences. "Send word to Earth Command," Kelly ordered. "Phase 5 is now active. We need to be ready for whatever comes next." Colonel Morgan received new orders as his Marines finished securing the last holdout ships in the alien fleet. "All units prepare for extended deployment. Intelligence suggests this was just the first test." The human forces had passed that test with devastating effectiveness. In less than a week, they had destroyed a 1,000-year-old empire and established themselves as the galaxy's newest power. But Kelly knew that in the vast darkness of space, there were always bigger predators waiting to test the new alpha species. "Set course for Earth," Kelly commanded. "It's time to show the galaxy what humanity does with victory." The human fleet began the journey home, leaving behind the scattered remains of the once mighty Confederacy. But they carried with them something more valuable than military victory. They carried the knowledge that humanity could not just survive in a hostile galaxy, but dominate it. 6 months after the last Zephyrian ship had limped away from Earth's solar system, Commander Rick Taylor stood on the observation deck of the new human embassy on Zephyria, Prime, the planet that had once been the proud capital of a galactic empire. Now flew human flags, alongside the banners of dozens of newly independent worlds. The transformation had been swift and complete. Where the Confederacy had ruled through fear and oppression, humanity offered something the galaxy had never seen: genuine partnership based on mutual benefit rather than submission. Taylor watched as alien children played in the embassy gardens below. Kresh youngsters chased Veltar cubs while Yeth adolescents taught human children their traditional songs. It was a scene that would have been impossible under Confederacy rule, where species mixing was strictly controlled. "Commander, the morning briefing is ready," his aide announced. Lieutenant Amy Foster had volunteered for embassy duty after serving on the front lines during the war. Like many humans, she found the challenge of building peace more interesting than the relatively simple task of winning battles. Taylor made his way to the conference room where representatives from 43 different worlds gathered for their daily coordination meeting. The Human Administrative Council had replaced the Confederacy's rigid hierarchy with something unprecedented in galactic history: a voluntary association where each world had an equal voice. "Good morning, everyone," Taylor began in Universal Standard, though he could have conducted the meeting in any of 20 alien languages. "Let's start with the economic reports." The numbers were staggering. In just 6 months, trade between formerly Confederacy worlds had increased by 800%. Without the crushing tribute requirements that had drained their resources for centuries, alien civilizations were experiencing prosperity they had never imagined possible. Ambassador Kethvar, a former Zephyrian military commander who had defected during the final battle, presented the shipping statistics. Human logistics networks have reduced transport costs by 60%, while increasing cargo capacity by nearly double. Many worlds are reporting surpluses for the first time in their recorded history. The humans had applied the same innovation to peacetime administration that they had brought to warfare. While the Confederacy had seen member worlds as resources to be exploited, humanity viewed them as partners in a vast economic and cultural exchange. Captain Susan Clark commanded the human peacekeeping fleet that patrolled the former Confederacy space. Her ships were smaller and fewer in number than the old Zephyrian Navy, but they were far more effective. Instead of enforcing tribute collection and suppressing dissent, they focused on protecting trade routes and mediating disputes between worlds. "Patrol Report 17, Clark announced during the security briefing. The Outer Rim sectors remain peaceful. 3 minor territorial disputes were resolved through mediation. No military action was required. The contrast with Confederacy methods was stark. Where the aliens had used overwhelming force to maintain order, humans used diplomacy backed by the knowledge that their military capabilities were unmatched. Most problems could be solved with conversation when everyone knew that the alternative was facing humanity's war machine. Dr. Patricia Bell, formerly of Earth's Diplomatic Corps, had established the Galactic Education Initiative. Her programs were teaching alien species not just human languages and customs, but human approaches to problem-solving and innovation. "We've had a breakthrough on Kresh Prime," Bell reported. "Their scientists have developed a new faster-than-light communication system by combining their mathematical abilities with human engineering techniques. The prototype is already 3 times more efficient than anything the Confederacy ever produced." This was the secret of humanity's success in the post-war period. Rather than simply replacing the Confederacy with human rule, they had created something entirely new. A galactic community where each species contributed their unique strengths to common goals. Admiral Murphy arrived from Earth aboard his flagship for a scheduled review of the new order's progress. The man who had delivered humanity's famous ultimatum now oversaw the most successful interstellar government in known history. "Status report, Commander Taylor," Murphy requested as he settled into the embassy's main briefing room. "All sectors remain stable, Admiral. Economic growth continues to exceed projections. Most importantly, we haven't detected any signs of organized resistance to the new system." Murphy nodded with satisfaction. "What about external threats?" Taylor activated the holographic display showing the galaxy beyond the former Confederacy borders. "The hegemony has made 3 probe attempts into our space. Each was turned back without incident. The Stellar Republic has opened formal diplomatic channels and appears interested in trade agreements. The victory over the Confederacy had indeed attracted attention from other galactic powers, but humanity's response had been measured and professional. They demonstrated strength without aggression, making it clear that they wanted peace but were prepared for any alternative. Agent Paul Dixon, now serving as Director of External Intelligence, provided updates on threats beyond their borders. "The other major powers are still evaluating our capabilities. Our demonstration against the Confederacy was thorough enough that most potential adversaries are choosing diplomacy over confrontation. This had been part of humanity's strategy from the beginning. The war against the Confederacy was not just about survival, but about establishing humanity's position in the galactic order. By defeating such a powerful enemy so completely, they had discouraged other potential threats from testing human resolve. Captain Tony Lewis had established the Cultural Exchange Program, which was producing unexpected benefits throughout former Confederacy space. "Admiral, we're seeing fascinating developments as species interact freely for the first time in centuries. Yeth artistic traditions are influencing Veltar music. Kresh mathematical concepts are revolutionizing human engineering. The program was creating bonds between worlds that went far beyond simple military alliances or trade agreements. For the first time in galactic history, different species were genuinely learning from each other rather than simply coexisting." Dr. Nancy White's analysis division had been studying the long-term implications of humanity's rapid rise to galactic prominence. "Admiral, our psychological profiles suggest that most species are adapting well to the new order. The concept of voluntary association rather than forced submission appears to be psychologically appealing to most galactic civilizations. This was perhaps humanity's greatest innovation, the idea that strength could be used to protect and nurture rather than simply to dominate. The galaxy had known conquerors before, but it had never known a species that conquered in order to set others free." Murphy stood at the embassy's highest observation platform as the day cycle ended on Zephyria Prime. The city below sparkled with lights from dozens of different architectural traditions as species that had been kept separate for centuries learned to live and work together. "Sir, there's something you should see," Taylor said, joining him at the window. He handed Murphy a datapad containing the latest intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Murphy read in silence as the significance of the information became clear. 3 more major galactic powers had fallen to internal revolutions inspired by the example of the former Confederacy worlds. Species throughout the galaxy were questioning why they should accept oppression when the example of human-led cooperation offered so much more. "It's spreading," Murphy said quietly. "The idea that there's an alternative to the old ways of empire and domination." Taylor nodded. "The children in our schools are already speaking of themselves as galactic citizens rather than members of individual species. They're thinking in ways that would have been impossible under the old system." Murphy smiled as he watched alien youngsters playing games that mixed traditions from a dozen different worlds. The last transmission from Human Command had promised to show the galaxy how war was done. But humanity's greatest victory was teaching the galaxy how peace could be built. The Human Embassy's communication center received thousands of messages daily from worlds across the galaxy. Some were requests for admission to the voluntary association. Others were pleas for help from oppressed populations. A few were challenges from species that still believed in the old ways of conquest and domination. Murphy's response to all of them was consistent. Humanity offered partnership to those who wanted peace and protection, to those who needed it. But to those who chose the path of aggression, his message was always the same words that had started the galaxy's transformation. Since you selected war, let us show you how it's done. The transmission that had once been humanity's declaration of resistance had become the galaxy's promise of freedom. And in the schools and meeting halls of 100 worlds, children who had never known oppression learned the story of the species that had changed everything by refusing to surrender when surrender seemed like the only option. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The diplomatic station floated in the darkness between Earth and Mars like a metal flower blooming in space. Admiral Kane Murphy stood at the observation deck watching the alien ships approach. Their vessels were beautiful in a way that human ships were not. Smooth curves and flowing lines that spoke of a technology far beyond anything Earth had ever produced. The Zephyrian fleet numbered in the hundreds, each ship larger than anything in the human navy. Murphy adjusted his dress uniform and walked toward the conference room. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridors of Aurora's Edge. Most of the station's crew had been evacuated days ago when the aliens first made contact. Only essential personnel remained for what everyone knew would be humanity's most important diplomatic meeting. The conference room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Lisa Hayes was already seated at the long table, her hands folded calmly in front of her. She looked up as Murphy entered and gave him a small nod. Hayes was Earth's top military strategist, though the aliens didn't know that. To them, she was just another human diplomat. "Any word from Earth Command?" Murphy asked quietly. "They're ready," Hayes replied. Her voice was steady, showing no sign of the tension that filled the room. "All stations report green." Murphy took his seat at the head of the table just as the alien delegation entered. High Commander Vextar led the group, his tall form moving with the fluid grace of his species. The Zephyrian stood nearly 8 feet tall with skin that shifted between blue and silver depending on the light. Behind him came representatives from 11 other species, all members of the Confederacy that had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Vextar's translator device crackled to life as he spoke. "Humans of Earth, we have come to deliver our final message." His voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "Your species has been observed and evaluated. You are confined to a single world with primitive technology and limited resources. You pose no threat to the Confederacy, but you occupy a system that we require." The alien commander gestured toward a holographic display that materialized above the table. It showed Earth's solar system with red markers indicating Zephyrian fleet positions. There were so many red dots that the display looked like it was bleeding. "We offer you 3 choices," Vextar continued. "First, you may submit to Confederacy rule. Your people will be relocated to designated areas and your world will be properly utilized. Second, you may abandon your planet entirely. We will provide transport to suitable worlds on the galaxy's rim. Third, if you choose to resist, we will demonstrate why the Confederacy has never lost a war." Murphy listened without expression. Around the table, other human representatives maintained their calm facades. Dr. Sandra Bell, officially Earth's chief scientist, took notes on a simple tablet. Captain Greg Walsh, commander of Earth's merchant marine, seemed more interested in studying the alien technology than the threats being made. "Your fleets are small," said another alien, this one from the insectoid Kresh species. "Your weapons are crude. Your people have never left their home system in meaningful numbers. What could you possibly do against the might of 12 worlds?" Hayes spoke for the first time since the aliens arrived. "You've done your homework on us." Her tone was conversational, almost friendly. "Tell me, how long have you been watching Earth?" 37 of your years, Vextar replied. "Long enough to catalog your limitations." 37 years, Hayes repeated thoughtfully. "That's interesting. What did you see in that time?" The Zephyrian skin shifted toward a deeper blue, a sign of mild confusion. "We observed a species that builds crude vessels and ventures barely beyond its own moon. A people so primitive they still use chemical rockets and metal projectiles. You have made no attempt to expand or explore. You remain trapped on your single world like insects in a jar." Murphy smiled for the first time since the meeting began. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Commander Hayes, would you like to explain what we've actually been doing for the past 37 years? Hayes stood and walked to the holographic display. With a gesture, she changed the image from the Zephyrian fleet positions to something else entirely. The new display showed the solar system as the aliens had never seen it. Hidden bases on asteroids lit up in green. Disguised installations on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn suddenly became visible. Weapon platforms that had been mistaken for mining equipment revealed their true nature. You see, High Commander, Hayes said calmly. Humans are very good at being underestimated. While you were watching us build what you thought were primitive ships, we were actually building something else entirely. The display zoomed in on Mars, revealing massive underground complexes that the alien scanners had somehow missed. Then it showed the asteroid belt, where what had appeared to be simple mining operations were actually the galaxy's most sophisticated weapons manufacturing facilities. 37 years ago, we detected your long-range scouts, Murphy said, standing to join Hayes at the display. We knew you were out there watching and judging, so we decided to give you exactly what you expected to see. A primitive species that posed no threat. Vexitar's skin was now cycling rapidly between colors, a clear sign of agitation. Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any significant military buildup. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Dr. Bell said, finally looking up from her tablet. Human technology might seem primitive to you, but we're very good at hiding things. We've had a lot of practice. The alien delegation exchanged glances. Several of the smaller species were shifting nervously. The Kresh representative made a clicking sound that didn't translate well. Even if you have hidden installations, Vextar said, you cannot match our firepower. Our fleet alone outnumbers anything you could possibly field by 10 to 1. Numbers, Captain Walsh said, speaking for the first time. You're very focused on numbers. That's good. Let me give you some numbers to consider. He activated his own display device. New information appeared in the hologram, showing ship counts and weapon specifications that made the aliens step back from the table. Those are our defensive platforms, Walsh explained. Just the ones in the inner system. Would you like to see what we have in the outer planets? Or perhaps you'd be interested in our mobile fleet. The display changed again, revealing sleek ships that looked nothing like the crude vessels the aliens had been observing. These were weapons of war, built for one purpose only. You have 72 hours to make your choice, Vextar said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. Submit, leave, or be destroyed. Murphy walked back to his seat and settled into it comfortably. You know, High Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You offered us 3 choices, but you forgot about the 4th option. There is no 4th option, the alien replied. Sure there is, Murphy said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had commanded respect across multiple star systems. The 4th option is that we show you what happens when someone threatens Earth. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. The alien delegation stared at the human admiral, trying to process what they had just heard. You cannot be serious, Vextar said finally. You would choose war against impossible odds? We're not choosing war, Hayes said, returning to her seat. You chose war the moment you came here with threats and ultimatums. We're just choosing how to respond to your choice. Murphy stood and straightened his uniform. High Commander, you and your fleet have 72 hours to leave our system. If you're still here after that time, we'll consider it an act of war. And since you selected war, we'll show you how it's done. The alien delegation filed out in stunned silence, leaving the humans alone in the conference room. As soon as the doors closed, Hayes activated her communicator. Earth Command, this is Hayes. Send the activation codes to all stations. Operation Sleeping Giant is now live. Murphy watched through the observation deck as the alien ships began to withdraw to what they thought was a safe distance. Do you think they'll actually leave? He asked. Hayes joined him at the window. No, they've ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. They can't imagine that anyone could challenge them, especially not us. Then they're about to learn something new, Murphy said. Send the message to all commands. Full activation in 72 hours. Outside, the Zephyrian fleet settled into position around the solar system's edge, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this exact moment for nearly 4 decades. The sleeping giant was about to wake up and the galaxy would never be the same.